Anyway, I should mention, just as a part of understanding where I'm coming from in this whole deal, when Dr. Brooks invited me to Jacksonville, and the fact that I have a serious interest in justice and the correct execution of the law, and I made some contacts and friends that were disgruntled with the system. The Latners, for instance, the daughter, the Karen's niece, Melissa, had been murdered in Jacksonville. The murderer went around town bragging that he had done the murder. And the police would not investigate. And the reason was because this guy had been convicted of drugs. And then what they'd done is they turned him so that he would rat out on other people. So he was their informant. And the last thing they wanted to do was for him to be gone forever to prison on a murder charge. And so they didn't do anything about it. And Karen had all kinds of evidence, and nobody would lift a finger. And that was just one example of a bunch of them. Anyway, I was there just, humbly doing my thing and helping people across the country. And then the day came when I became aware of a church building a few blocks away up for sale. Made a deal with the church directors and said, okay, I'm going to put down cash down payment for our church group, and then pay the balance off in cash 6 months from now. And this was in the fall of 2007, and the real estate closing was April 30th, 2008. And this building was like it's like around 35,000 square feet with 30,000 plus usable space, and on 2.5 acres downtown Jacksonville. And I put in everything I had, and there were also other people put in work. Managed to make it on the day of the closing with 45 minutes to spare after half a year. Finally came up with the last bit, and then immediately 2 weeks later began 3 SWAT attacks. Most people can't handle one, and there were 3 SWAT attacks in less than a month. I mean, we're talking smashing those big expensive glass doors to smithereens, damaging the aluminum frames and everything, and just terrible, And they come charging in with their full riot gear and their machine guns and shotguns and everything else. And the second time they did that, I believe they came to kill me. And I have good reason to believe that, because the building, so the building looks like this, and Dr. Brooks's dental clinic is here, and then there's an entry here and an entry here, and my office is over here. And they break in at this end of the building for the first time. The first time they broke in here, went all their way up to where I am. So they actually are in my bedroom, in my office. They see the layout of the place and everything. They're there. And they come, that was May 15th, 2008. When they came back on May 22nd, instead of coming in this door, because they know I'm here, no, they come in the middle of the building and they'd shut the power off in that whole section. So it's in the dark, and what happens in the dark? Accidents, like we thought Fox was reaching for a gun, and so we shot him 40 rounds in the back. You know what I mean? And but anyway, they come charging in. They smashed his door to the smithereens, and before they did it, they had a news media lined up on the street. Okay, and I called that stuff into question too, because it's not reporting the news, because the news happens and then they report it, right? But these people were integrated into the thing, so they were there with their cameras rolling before anything happened. So, you know, the police use the battering ram. Well, they're there putting that on television, you know, and so. And the propaganda was not just in that county, not just the state of Texas, not just nationally, it went international, okay? And people telling me in Canada that they watched the stuff on television. Anyway, they come charging in first thing in the morning, and they come into my section of the building. I'm in the office, I'm at the computer, and with me is Judy Scott, 70 years old, recovered from 6 bypass heart surgery, worked under 2 sheriffs, and was licensed to do so before she retired. Could you have a better witness? And they were like in a state of shock, you know, because there she was. And they stuck the machine guns in her face, handcuffed her so tight that she had scars. And she was begging for her heart medication, which they wouldn't let her have. You know, they could have killed the poor woman. And so this is the way they are. And, you know, hopefully with the rest of the stuff that we cover this weekend, you'll be more prepared or armed so that you won't be defenseless if any of this kind of crap happens to you. That's my objective. Does that make sense? Because it was a horrendous experience. As a matter of fact, with 3 SWAT attacks, they stacked charges on me to where I was looking at multiple lifetimes in prison. And with 9 charges and over 3 years of litigation, they got 0 victories. Now, most people don't survive a single attack. You know what I mean? The statistics in Texas in particular, apparently the FBI did this check on the statistics, and Texas wins 99.6% of the cases. That leaves 0.04 for all the rest of us. How sweet is that?
Just 0.4.
Huh?
Just 0.4.
Yeah, pardon me. It's 0%, 0.4.
Well, 0 for us because you win the other 0.4.
Yes. So 0.4%.
How about Dr. Brooks? What happened with Dr. Brooks?
Oh, thank you. Sometimes I need a reminder. Okay, so what happened to Dr. Brooks? Yes. So I did up the amicus curiae. Like I say, the woman gave me the report the day he was jailed. I did up the amicus curiae the next day, and I got it to the court and got it file stamped in. And the file stamp said 502. Okay, most people don't know what that means. They close at 5.
Right.
So what happened is the security had tried to keep me out, and I managed to get in and get it to the clerk, and it was file stamped even though I was late and like that. Anyway, a couple business days he was popped right out because they can't make it work when they're, assuming facts not in evidence, and with what they were doing. And an additional piece on that whole deal is that the document, the amicus curiae, was pretty ferocious, as you can understand. And I'll have a copy for you all on that too. It was pretty ferocious. The net effect was they've never let me in that courthouse again.
I got a comment.
Okay.
I got a comment. And the comment is, I think that you mentioned Middle Temple Bar. And I think they don't want you to know about the Middle Temple Bar. They don't care if you know it, but they don't want the world to know it. And if you explain where that comes from, I can explain it, but I'd rather hear it from you.
Okay. Well, all these attorneys are with the Bar Association, and so you'll have the Phoenix Bar under the Arizona Bar, it's under the American Bar, which all comes from the Middle Temple of the Crown, Inns of Court, London, England. They control worldwide. Okay?
Where
So
does that come from? Go to the next step.
Babylon.
No, the Jesuit priest.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Everything's
it's-
controlled by the Jesuits.
yeah, there's the Jesuits are involved, and
Everything.
Queen Elizabeth and all of that stuff. I mean, people here wave the flag and have fireworks for July the 4th, but are apparently unaware that the Queen is still running the thing. George Bush is her cousin.
One more comment, and I'll sit down and shut up. Most people believe that the Crown of England is the King and Queen. But the King and Queen and the Crown of England, the royal family, are as diverse as my fingers right now. The Crown of England is a 1 mile square area called the City in London. It's exactly like the Washington, D.C.
Right.
In fact, Washington, D.C. was patterned after it. And the Crown of England runs the world. And you have to go do a little more study, I can tell you, but I don't want to get into it. If you want me to tell it, I'll tell it.
Well, I'll try and cover that here right now, real quick. People have heard the phrase, sun never sets on the British Empire, and they're global, okay? That's why the sun never sets on the British Empire. But it's in the Bible, and the verse in the Bible, I forget exactly where it is, but it's, the scepter shall not depart the hand of Judah to the second coming of Shiloh. The scepter is rulership over the planet.
Is that in the book of David, Genesis 49?
Somebody's real sharp here. So anyway,
49.
it's a part of our Heavenly Father's sense of humor from my perspective, because if it was a giant like Russia, this vast country with immense resources and a population that could raise any kind of an army that they want, okay? If they had rulership over the planet, it would be one thing, but there's this speck of an island, and they don't call it Britain, it's Great Britain, right? And this speck of an island rules the planet. You know, it's like Gideon when he was trying to raise up the army, and our Heavenly Father said, no, let those guys go. And because he was going to show his mighty hand. And so that's just the way it is. So, if they stack these charges up on me, like I say, to where I was looking multiple lifetimes, and one of the things was, it was at the beginning, it was like December 3rd was a court date for me to show up in court
On these multiple cases that they stacked up on you, did you use allocution on any of them or all of them?
I beat them all before sentencing.
But did you use that document?
Allocution is at sentencing, but they never got me there. I beat all this, everything. I mean, they got 0 victories. On all 9 charges, they got 0 victories so far. And they're making rumblings about more, but I think that they got a problem. Because it's pretty plain and clear to everyone now that it's a religious and political persecution. You know? So they had me come to court on December 3rd, and there they rearrested me. This is back in December 3rd, 2008. So they rearrested me right there in the court. By the way, I came to the court, and I'm carrying the Bible, and I said to the bailiff, I said, I heard some rumors that there's a charge against me, a warrant for my arrest. And I said, would you please check on that? And so he checks and click with the handcuffs, and they got, this other charge against me, so put me in jail. Now the other charge, the one that this new thing that they were putting on me, was barratry. And most people don't know what barratry is, but you're laughing over there. Anyway, barratry, the full title of the thing is Barratry and Solicitation of Professional Employment. And the statute lists who can do that. And it's licensed attorneys, because they can do like ambulance chasing, and try and get customers. As you're going into the hospital in a gurney, they can give you a business card and say, somebody smashed into you, call me, we can sue them, And it's that kind of activity. So licensed attorneys, licensed medical doctors, licensed chiropractors, licensed medical staff, like nursing staff and so on, and licensed investigators. They're all listed in the statute, but I have no license. I don't even have a driver's license. Okay? I have no license, and I'm not on the list, and I can't solicit professional employment anyway. As I've explained to you from the beginning, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a professional, and that's the end of that. Okay? So, they're accusing me of barratry. It's complete nonsense. And they put me in jail. The bond was set at $30,000. Friends paid the bond. By the way, the first time that they tried bonding me out, I just flat refused. I wouldn't sign their papers. I wouldn't get a bond out or anything. But my friends around me said, well, Robert, you need to get out, not only to fight your own case, but, you got other people that are depending on you for help and so on. Well, okay. Other than that, I was just going to stay, because I could drive a buggy from in there. So, on the barratry thing, friends bonded me out. I filed a claim against the city, against their risk management, for what the barratry thing was. And then they rearrested me because of that. They were going to retaliate against me because I made a claim about the false arrest on the barratry and the false incarceration and that. So they rearrest me and they call it tampering with a government record. And it's another felony. And in Texas, they multiply this stuff. If they got 2 or more felonies, they multiply it. And so now I'm looking like a felony 1, which is life in prison, 25 to life. 25 years added to me. It doesn't matter whether they want to say it could be life in prison. 25 years is it anyway. What am I going to do? I'm 62. Add 25 to that, you'll be 87. One of the biggest problems in the jail system, of course, is no medical care. Doesn't matter what your problem is, tough luck. Tylenol, now that solves everything. So they jailed me on January 23rd for the tampering with the government record simply because I made a claim against the city. And so I'm looking at life in prison. And it wasn't that was the biggest problem. It was that there were people I was trying to help. And I knew that people were going to die over it. And some people did. 2 men died and 1 almost committed attempted suicide. And so I was jailed on January 23rd, 2009. And by January 26th, just 3 days later, something happened. And I would share with you that, by the hand of our Heavenly Father, at that county jail, one of the guys who runs the jail is Lieutenant Parsons. And he has his own church and he's a preacher. Him coming in to run the jail changed everything. All new bedding, food improved. He would not tolerate any guard disrespecting any inmate, period. If they disrespected an inmate, they were called on the carpet. And I guess probably if it happened a second time, they were fired. So, with him running the thing, when I was in solitary, so press the button on the intercom, and I'm having a problem. So they came with the stuff to measure the blood pressure and the rest of that. And I knew I was having a problem, but I didn't know how bad it was. And the guard that came said, well, we got to call the paramedics. The paramedics came, and when they checked me, they said, it's time for the hospital. And so I was whisked away in an ambulance from the jail to the hospital in an ambulance for nitro and oxygen. Now, Susie here was arranged the seminar. She apparently had several heart attacks because of the pressure put on her in the system. And again, the reason I'm explaining this stuff is because so everyone will know the dangers of their system and where I'm coming from and how we can know what to do in the various situations. And we're gonna plow through some pretty amazing stuff this weekend. And one of the things is testimony versus noise. If you don't make a testimony, then it's just noise. And the way we make a testimony is this, and I'll provide you a sheet on this, by the way, okay? So the way we make a testimony is this, the attorney speaks, the judge is listening, and then the judge says, well, Mr. Fox, what do you have to say? And they expect me to just start talking. But instead, what I say to them is, I understand that I'm to accurately state the facts, and if I knowingly inaccurately state the facts, I may subject myself to penalties for perjury under the laws of the United States of America. Having qualified my testimony here today, I hereby state for the record, and then I go into it. And now it's testimony, and I'm up here and they're down in the basement. Okay? Because nothing what the attorney says counts for anything. And that's like Mr. Heitman pointed out, is the case Trinity versus Pagliaro, and there's other cases. And on the agency case, the federal one is Federal Crop Insurance versus Merrill. And you have a duty to inquire as to the scope of their agency. And it says that because the agent may be unaware of the limitations on his own authority. And that happens all over the place. That happened for me trying to get to this seminar. I went to the airport at Tyler, Texas, and they have a puddle jumper that takes from Tyler to Dallas-Fort Worth, which is one of the most incredible airports in the world. But the TSA wouldn't let me on. They would not let me on the plane at Tyler.
Why?
Well, allegedly I don't have the identification stuff that they want, like a driver's license or a passport. Well, I had a passport. I trailed off on that one too. And we'll come back to that in a second. Then I'll finish this, and thank you for reminding me. So, I don't have a driver's license, I don't have a passport. These things were stolen from me. Okay? So, and also, immigration had a card that they required me to have it on my person at all times. And I'm thinking to myself, I have to have it in the shower too. And anyway, that's how ridiculous it gets. But here's the funny part, is that these guys already know me. There was a Tyler police officer right there. We remember you from 5 years back. And, they know me. So what the heck are they going to get from looking at a driver's license? To know who I am? They already know who I am. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the same thing happened at the federal court, by the way. Like I was explaining, the Tyler court, they won't let me in there. But that Tyler court is not the only one in what they call the Eastern District of Texas. In Marshall, Texas, which is in the Eastern District, I filed a civil lawsuit. And then, even though I filed a civil lawsuit, when Alan Jackson showed up out there, something else happened. And the something else was that suddenly the U.S. Marshals wouldn't let me in that building. How about it? I paid the $350 to file a civil lawsuit, and now I can't come into the building to file my papers. So, and then this affected friends, Tim and Don, on a tax evasion case. July 5th was jury selection. So they picked me up and we went to the court in Marshall. And they were being prosecuted by Alan Jackson, the same guy that prosecuted Dr. Brooks. And, but the judge was different. So, it was jury selection on July the 5th. But the U.S. Marshals wouldn't let me in the building. even though they know exactly who I am, because I don't have a Texas driver's license. Well, if the week before I did a name change and changed my name to Elmer Fudd and got a Texas driver's license and presented the Texas driver's license saying that I'm Elmer Fudd, I could count on it that they would have arrested me, claiming that it was falsification. They know that I'm Robert Fox. Get that picture. That's how absurd some of this stuff gets. But anyway, my train of thought.
10 minutes.
Yeah. So they wouldn't let me in. So I couldn't. And by the way, it's the law that if there's a hearing, if there's something happening in the courtroom, it's public. Okay? But this public can't get in there if you understand what I'm getting at. So I had to sit in a restaurant across the street. The whole day was wasted for me. And that was July the 5th. July the 6th was the beginning of their trial. I said to him, well, there's no point in me going because I can't get in. July the 7th, Tim, who's an economics professor in Tyler, by the way, at the college, and his lovely wife, Dawn, who works at a health food store. Anyway, Tim goes ahead and subpoenas me for their trial. So, because I have the subpoena, now I can come in. Now, when they come in, they have 5 U.S. Marshals flanking me into the courtroom. Now, what does it look like? For the jury, I'm the only witness that comes in flanked by 5 U.S. Marshals. It's like I'm Osama bin Laden or something worse. And so that taints the jury right there. And the judge's assistant says, for me to raise my right hand and do the oath, he said, I have a religious objection pursuant to Matthew 5. That's as far as I could get. The judge was barreling over the top of me and with a ferocious tonality and everything else, cutting me off. So I didn't get to say Matthew 5:33 to 37 and James 5:12, which is make no swearing at all. And I used my little statement normally, but this guy wasn't going to have any of that and denied my testimony. And when I saw the shift happening, I was thinking to myself, I can't believe this is happening. Because in the civil suit, I warned him. And he's supposed to read that stuff in the civil suit. And I warned him on July 29th in a filing about exactly what was happening. On June 29th in a filing, exactly what was happening on July 7th when he denied my testimony. As I mentioned earlier, religious freedom is serious. So there was a case in the Fifth Circuit, Federal Circuit of Appeals, is Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. Not that that's a big deal, but their bosses issued a ruling in a case called Ferguson versus Commissioner of Internal Revenue, and Ferguson was denied her testimony at trial because she had a religious objection to the oath. And then what happens? The IRS wins, right? Because she can't get any of her evidence in because she can't testify. So it goes up on appeal to Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and they ruled the court, that's the trial court, the court abused its discretion in refusing the testimony of a witness offered on religious grounds. That's like a 2x4 upside the head for the trial court judge.
Yeah.
And then they go on to say that it's against the First Amendment and contrary to the Federal Rules of Evidence, Rule 603, we reverse. Kaboom! Because they denied her testimony. So this judge with Tim and Don's case, he's denying my testimony. And I go outside the court, and they basically threw me out. And I couldn't even sit down and watch the rest of the proceedings. The U.S. Marshals out of the building, like that. And so I wait outside, and finally Tim and Dawn come out, and Dawn's got tears running down her cheeks, and the jury convicted them. Well, the thing is that they had years to prepare, and they hadn't really prepared. And now they get convicted, and Dawn's crying and Tim's distraught. And I said, well, it's not over yet, because when he denied my testimony, they created a hell of a problem for themselves. And so I filed my amicus curiae affidavit backed by 3 witness affidavits. And the judge who formerly issued all of his edicts on 1 page was faced with something where his response was 15 pages, trying to cover up what he had done. But I don't think it's covered up, so we'll see how it shakes out. But by the way, it's the power of affidavits too, because I talked with another guy. He's in federal lockup in Mississippi, and for the purposes of his trial, he had utilized the help of a guy who's well known, I won't mention his name, but anyway, allegedly charges $25,000 for a case, okay? So, but this guy is a guy who believes that you do this stuff by motions. And so I asked the guy who's the prisoner, now that he's contacting me, now that he's convicted and contacting me, I said, and I knew the other guy who was helping him, and he's a good guy, we're all trying our best, and I said, he did motions, right? And the prisoner said, yes, he did motions. And I said, well, did that do any good? He said, no good at all. And that's the problem. See, attorneys do motions. Attorney versus attorney, that works out, there's going to be something there. But for us, if you don't do affidavits, you got a problem. Because motions are pretty please may I, they are begging, and what you get out of that is denied. That's what you get. One word, denied. Anyway, how are we doing time-wise?
Break, lunchtime.
Lunchtime. So I kind of trailed off. We get on these tangents and it derails me. I was explaining to you earlier about when I was at the Federal Torture Facility in Springfield, Missouri. There's one little piece there that I should share with you. There was an inmate there, and he wrote home to his parents, and he told them in the letter that he didn't expect that he'd be living very long because he figured they were going to murder him. And he wrote them a letter on Friday, and on Monday and he told them in the letter, he figured that by the time they'd be reading the letter, he'd already be dead. And they got the letter on Monday, and he was dead. I sat in the cafeteria with a guy who had been in an adjacent cell and was forced to clean up the blood and the mess on the walls. Like it beat the crud out of him and blood all over the place. And this guy had to clean the walls, and then they moved him to another part of the place so that he wouldn't be there when they, when there was any investigation. And 60 Minutes did an expose on the place at the Federal Torture Facility in Springfield. 60 Minutes was there just before my arrival, and the Bureau of Prisons tried to get a court injunction to block the airing of the material on 60 Minutes. And 60 Minutes fought it, and I think it was around April 1991 that they aired the interviews, and of people who had suffered terribly, and with the federal system. There was a woman got into an argument with the postman about her welfare check, and they put her in a lockup, and federal lockup, and she had seizure medication, which they took away from her and wouldn't let her have. And 60 Minutes was interviewing one of the inmates who had been released and was across the street from the place. And this female inmate said that Isabella Suarez went into seizures, and that the inmates were alarmed and wanted to do something, that they literally called 911, and the paramedics came but were not allowed in, and Isabella Suarez died as the prosecution gave up on the case and would have released her because it didn't really amount to a crime. So, it's that kind of thing that can happen to anybody, and most people don't even realize it. That, if you had some bad words with somebody, or just anything, just any little thing, and they point the finger at you and click with the handcuffs and the rest of that, and next thing you know, you got a real big problem. Like, for instance, me, when I felt that I was having a problem, because I was really stressed out about, not that I would have to spend time in jail, because I've done plenty of time in jail, but there were people on the outside that I knew were depending on me. And I knew that if I was in jail, I couldn't help them. Not leastwise, not like I had been, So my heart just started pounding, and it was like, I felt a tightness in my chest, and I knew that my heart was racing, and even I couldn't, even with like trying to do meditation techniques of peace and tranquility, it just wasn't working. and so I got rushed to the hospital myself. And Susie could tell you that, she got rushed to the hospital. Some of these places, they don't do that. They'll let you die first. So it's terrible, and it's part of the reason why we have to have our own education, because attorneys don't really help you. Those who don't know. I should probably address that issue right now with one of what I think is one of the clearest examples. You all have heard of Mel Gibson, Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, Kiefer Sutherland, Nicole Richie, David Hasselhoff. You've all heard of these people?
Aren't they all drunks?
I don't know if they're all drunks, but let's just say they all got dinged with DWI. And of course they got big bucks. I can't imagine them spending anything less than $50,000 on an attorney. They probably could have spent $250,000. I can imagine Paris Hilton spending $1 million. I mean, what is it to her? Her grandfather cut her out of the will to the tune of $60 million, for her sex videos. And but anyway, these people have big bucks. They paid big bucks. Does anyone think that they tried to find the dumbest attorney that they could get? No, they went and they got the best that they could get. I mean, if they would have reached outside of California or whatever, they would have done whatever they could, and they certainly have the money to accomplish it. Yet every one of them was put in jail, was convicted, has a permanent criminal record, and pays the fine. On top of paying the attorney. Every one of them. Now, I don't have a Yellow Pages ad. I don't have an advertisement at halftime in the Super Bowl or anything like that. But some people do, call about different issues, and what I do, of course, is just educate. So I've had just 2 people come to me about DWI stuff that was 25 to life, like third hit deals, okay? And both of those cases, I only have 2, and both of those cases won me both. Now, how is it possible for somebody who isn't an attorney to win 25 to life DWI cases and attorneys can't? What's wrong with this picture?
They conspire to throw you to the wolves.
Yeah. And another one while we're on the same vein, I have a good friend in Dallas, and he has a daughter, and she married a fellow that is a professional locksmith. And that's a career where you have to be bonded, okay? There's no felons out there doing locksmithing, okay? So he had some kind of road rage event, and he pulled off the Dallas 635 loop into Garland. And I mentioned Garland before.
Yes.
About arresting me 6 times and never taking me to trial. I'll tell you another funny about Garland, just right quick here. Dallas police are instructed not to engage in high-speed pursuits on the city streets. It is far too dangerous. The liability is sky high. Okay? But if you're close to Garland, chase them into Garland, because in Garland, they will shoot to kill first and ask questions later. That's how they are there. So anyway, this guy pulls off the Dallas 635 loop, and he's in Garland. And the bad guy who's creating the problem pulls off after him. Now this guy's getting out of his car and is threatening the locksmith as he's doing so. And the locksmith says, "You better get back in your car because I have a gun." And the guy calls the cops. Now Garland cops are rough and tough, okay? And so they come and they talk to the guy who's complaining, and he says, "Well, that guy said he had a gun and he pointed the gun at me." Okay? Well, that didn't happen. Okay? And the guy said he pointed this pistol at him. Well, the only gun that was in the locksmith's truck was an unloaded rifle. So, and it was, you know how these trucks are? They've got like a metal cage type thing behind them, so that in an emergency stop and stuff crashes forward, it doesn't bash the driver's head into the windshield. He's got this cage there, so the only way he can access that gun, which didn't have any bullets, is to get out of the van, go around, open the side door, go in there, and then get the gun, right? So the police do that. They go in the side door, they get the gun, and they go and show it to the other guy and say, "Is this the gun that he had?" He said, "Yeah, that's the one." So he's up on this, heavy-duty felony for, this thing with the gun and all. And my friend calls me and he says, "My son-in-law is in this trouble," and blah, blah. And I explained to him, I said, if it was me, I would sit down at the kitchen table, write out the whole thing, make sure it's all in order and that you're not forgetting anything. And then I would go down to the Dallas grand jury and get in there and explain to the grand jury what happened. And I said, I think that will work for him. Well, they were plenty apprehensive about the whole situation, because not only was he facing prison time, but even after doing the prison time, his career would be gone. And what's the wife to do in the interim? So it's a big enough problem. And so they were really nervous, and they went and they got themselves an attorney. Now, this was no ordinary attorney. This was a judge attorney. This guy had been a judge for a number of years, and now he was in private practice. But because of his exalted status of being a judge, he told them, well, it'll be $5,000 down for this thing. Now, he didn't tell them how to derail or sidestep the whole issue. When this locksmith went down to the Dallas County Grand Jury and explained to them what had happened, they no-billed him. The case was finished right there. There was no indictment. There was no real substance to it. It was finished, over, done, and gone. The attorney never gave back a dime. I help people as best I can, but I didn't get that kind of reward. but the attorney who did nothing got the reward. It's just the way it is. Anyway, the issue here is what attorneys do. See, is it possible for this judge attorney not to know what I just shared with the locksmith? I don't think so. I think he knew full well how to bring the case to an end like that. The snap of his fingers to say, we're going to the grand jury, explain it to them, it'll be over. That's right. Not profitable. Not profitable for the attorney. So what they do is they will let things stretch out, and trial isn't good enough for them. They get you convicted at trial so that you can do an appeal at a lot more expense. And I met with a guy in Dallas one time, and he wanted to tell me about his case. I said, just for fun, let me tell you about your case. And every step of the way, he said, yeah, that's what they did. Yeah, that's what they did. That's their modus operandi, So that's just the way it is. Let's see.
Robert,
Yeah.
you left off an affidavit, so I wasn't sure if you actually had finished what you were wanting to say about that.
No, I'm not finished. I have one here, and on the break if you want to look at it. And I was going to make a copy of an affidavit. As a matter of fact, what I was going to do was the amicus curiae for Dr. Brooks, because people look at that and they're like stunned with the language I used on them, And like I say, they wouldn't let me in the federal courthouse after that.
And you can see that.
Yeah, seriously. I know you need to see it. And
Bring it fast.
bring it faster. I got it on the computer, and I bought a printer so that I'd be able to print this stuff up. And the time was such that I didn't have a chance to run off some of the things that I was going to run off. But we're going to get to it. Don't worry, we'll get to it. So that was one of the things I want to give you is that. And with regards to affidavits, what do I have here? I want to say something about
You said affidavits are supreme.
They're on up there. All affidavits are hearsay until they're testified to. But if you do everything by affidavit, who's opposing you? The attorney doesn't do affidavits. So you're set up to win on affidavits alone. Okay? Now, if they do counter affidavits, then, it goes to the next level and you have an evidentiary hearing. And by the way, in O'Connor's, they'll tell you that there's two kinds of hearing. Hearings for argument, hearings for evidence. And that they don't like the ones for evidence. Okay? They want the hearings for argument because the attorney argues and you argue. And like I said, that's just noise. So the judge gets to decide which noise he likes. So it all goes against you and the attorneys make lots of money. Now, when you're doing it all by affidavit, it's a different matter. And if they do a counter affidavit, then you get to demand an evidentiary hearing, and somebody's affidavit's got to be false. And so that's why they'll try and convert your work to motions. And so what actually happens countless times, the black bat suit says, I've considered the defense motions and they are all denied. And then somebody with some strength like Ron speaks up and says, I did not file any motions, I filed affidavits. And the black bat suit says, well, I'm treating your documents as motions. And then Ron says, again, I did not file any motions. I filed affidavits. It is a criminal offense to file a false affidavit. I notice I am not under arrest for filing a false affidavit. So it is clear that my affidavits are true, correct, and accurate. An affidavit is a statement of truth, so my uncontested affidavits are the truth. Are you deliberately denying the truth in order to falsify the record? Is it your intent to falsify the record and create denial of due process? Speak up, I can't hear you. And then there's cases, and I'm going to give you copies of both of these things. This script about affidavits and this here are the cases. There's a case, Morris versus National Cash Register, and an affidavit uncontested on the record for 30 days because it becomes undisputed fact as a matter of law. Okay? So, and there's a federal rule of evidence, I think it's 902. You could take your affidavit, file it in the public record, and now you've got something that's got some real juice there.
Like a UCC thing?
No.
Or just file with the Secretary of State?
Okay, every county has a county clerk and recorder where births, deaths, deeds, and mortgages are filed. And you go in there with your affidavit, and some of them will give you some static, okay? Because you'll say, I want to file this. They say, well, we don't have a place to file it. Go away. No, you have a miscellaneous file, and I want this filed in the miscellaneous file. And they can still give you some grief. And in Cherokee County, where they brought all these charges against me, they would not file my affidavits in the county clerk and recorder. No problem. I go one county over to Smith County, and they'd already been sued about that, and they